Welcome back. Yes, we are doing the Toronto preview, and Toronto is interesting. So their logo, the way that I have these magnets made up, the giant magnets, um, they're sharp. So some of them are really sharp. The Maple Leafs is the sharpest one of the bunch. So, yeah, if they somehow made the logo on their chest like removable and they could throw it, like you could have a pretty good weapon here. But they already have some good weapons on the ice as it is. And I don't think that it's all doom and gloom. And the funny thing is, I've seen a lot of comments about, well, the Leafs, they've lost so much. They lost a lot of players. Zach Hyman's going to be tough to replace. I'm not going to pretend he's not. And my prediction for this team is that they're probably not going to be one of the powers of the division. But I don't know if I want to play them in the first round of the playoffs because the expectations have been lowered. So sometimes that works out for teams when the expectations are a little bit lower. And eventually they have to win. Like it's been 17 years. Eventually you got to win around, right? It just had, and I know Florida fans are going, but, right. So, anyways, their special teams numbers, they were 20% on the power play, which was 16th. At times last year, the power play was a great frustration for Toronto. Their penalty kill surprisingly low at 24th, 78.5%. So they're going to want to improve both of those numbers. Their goals for 186, that was sixth overall in the NHL. Their goals against 148, which was seventh. For a team where people complain about their goaltending not being good enough and their defense not being good enough, they tend to put up pretty good defensive numbers. It's going to be interesting to see if, with a full year of Jack Campbell and now with Peter Mrazek in net, if the storyline changes and how well that tandem works together. Now, if we look at their draft history since 2015 and notable draft picks, 2015 at fourth overall, they draft Mitch Marner. And I'm wearing my Marner jersey because he's taken a lot of flack for the collapse they had against Montreal. Marner absolutely deserves some of the blame, but there's a lot of other guys who fell apart in that series against Montreal too. I think with Marner, I think it's his cap hit that makes him more of a target than others. Dermott, number 34 overall that year. And in 2016, of course, they win the draft lottery. They get Austin Matthews at number 1. And they drafted Brooks at 92. And Brooks may end up being in the lineup. I need to talk about their forwards. 2017, they draft Liljegren at 17. 2018, they drafted Sandin at 29. Please play him more. Thank you. 2019, they drafted Nick Robertson at 53. He should be on this team, but again, we need to talk about their forwards soon here. 2020, they drafted Amirov at 15. That could be a steal for them. Hirvonen, drafted at 59th. And Niemela, drafted at 64th. So 3 pretty solid draft picks by all accounts for them. And then 2021, they decided we don't need to be in the draft, and they only had 3 picks. So in a draft year where it's kind of a crapshoot anyways, maybe that makes a lot of sense to give up picks and only have 3 in the entire draft. But that's a move you make when you're a contender. And Kyle Dubas has approached this as if he feels they're a contender for the cup. And they may be. But again, until they get out of that first round, there are going to be people, a lot of people, who will have questions surrounding how this team is put together and what they're going to do going forward. So exits. Freddie Anderson, worst kept secret in the world. Freddie Anderson leaves the team. Joe Thornton has also left the team. Zach Hyman famously has now left the team to go to Edmonton. Galchenyuk. And if you look at the loss of Galchenyuk and say, man, that's going to hurt Toronto, I disagree. I think that while Galchenyuk had a better run in Toronto than what he was having in Ottawa, I still think that player is replaceable. Foligno, who didn't play a lot. Riley Nash also didn't play a lot. Scott Sabourin played 1 game. Now he's back to Ottawa, where I don't know. Does Matthews still pretend he doesn't know who he is? And then the new faces, you've got Amadio, you've got Bunting. I really like Bunting. I think that's a great pickup for them. Curtis Gabriel, Kampf, Kasha. I like the Kasha pickup as no risk. Nick Ritchie, Biega, good. 7th defenseman there for Biega. Mrazek has shown in Carolina that all the rumors of his demise were exactly that, just rumors. And then on a tryout is Josh Ho-Sang. We need to talk about their forwards. But first, their last 3 years, it's been pretty good. It's been pretty good for Toronto. 46, 28, and 8 for third in the Atlantic in 2018, 2019. One thing that's hurt Toronto is being in the same division as Boston and Tampa. Boston has their number in the playoffs, and Tampa back-to-back Stanley Cups. It's a tough division for Toronto. 36, 25, and 9 and third in the Atlantic again in 2019-2020. And then the season that we had in 2021, they finished 35, 14, and 7 for first in the North. And they cruised to first in the North. They were easily the best team in Canada. And then at playoff time, it looked like they were going to take out Montreal until they didn't. They had that 3-1 series lead, and then they lost that. Now, for the playoffs, this is where the storyline again becomes this team needs a win. They lost to Boston in the first round in 2019, a round that I was pretty sure Toronto should have won. 2020, they lost in the qualifying round to Columbus. Out goaltended in that one, which I know Freddie took a lot of blame in that, but they couldn't score either. 2021, they lose in round 1 against Montreal. The team needs a win in the first round, but I don't think that's going to be enough. If this team wins in the first round and loses in the second round, people still aren't going to be happy. Now we're going to talk about the forward group. There's a lot of players here. A lot. Dubas understands he's got a limited number of players he can have out on the ice at a time, right? I will say this, though, Toronto Marlies could be stacked. So you have Nylander, Matthews, Marner, Ritchie, Tavares, Mikheyev. That should be your top 6, right? That should, and whatever, you can put whatever person on whatever line you want. That's fine. You just put whoever you want on whatever line you want. That's one of the reasons I'm not putting up lines is because Toronto fans will tell you, that's a bad line you've got right there. Right. But if Nylander, Matthews, and Marner can all play together, they absolutely would want to. That's where Nylander would love to play, is with Matthews and Marner. Now, they may have that opportunity to do that nuclear option if Ritchie has some chemistry with Tavares and if Mikheyev can produce. And that's the question mark right there. You have to be able to produce in that top 6 role. And then you've got Kerfoot, Kampf, Simmons, Bunting, Engvall, and Spezza. That should be your bottom 6, right? But they have a lot more forwards than that. You have Kasha, who if Kasha's healthy, and that's always an if with Andre Kasha, is if he's healthy, he should be in the top 4 lines. Curtis Gabriel, a little bit of toughness. He should be the 13th forward, I would think, and they throw him in on nights where they may need him. Josh Hosang on a tryout. What if Hosang hits this out of the park? There's been the discussion about whether or not Josh Hosang was given a fair shake by the Islanders. What if it works out really well for Toronto? Where does he factor into the lineup, and who comes out? And what kind of deals then have to get made? You've got Amadio. You've got Brooks. Brooks looked really good for Toronto. Robertson. Robertson needs to play. Joey Anderson, Mulligan, and Brett Seeney's here as well. These are all NHL level. I think Joey Anderson, if given an opportunity, could be an interesting one as well. Toronto has a lot of options up front, which does kind of suit the playbook of Kyle Dubas. I think it was 2 years ago that he signed a whole bunch of depth guys over a period of a couple of days. Just everybody. Just here. It reminds me of what Vancouver's done this year too, where it's just, here's a bunch of guys. We signed a bunch. Now on the blue line, it's not as crowded, but there's some crowding here if Liljegren can come in and win himself a job. Timothy Liljegren is really for me, he's the wild card in this. Can he finally win a regular job? Will he get that opportunity? So you have Riley, you have Brody, Muzzin, and Hall. That's likely your top 4. And I say likely because Sandin needs to play. I am very impressed with Rasmus Sandin's game. I think he's a good defenseman. I don't understand why he hasn't played more. I'd like to see him get more of an opportunity this year for Toronto. And then there's Dermott, who they didn't lose to Seattle. There was rumors all year it was going to be Dermott. And then instead they lost McCann, who they had acquired in a deal with Pittsburgh designed to lose McCann. That was how that was designed to work, so they wouldn't lose Dermott off the blue line or have to worry about anybody else. Biega, good 7th, as I said, but there's Liljegren. If Liljegren has a really good camp and pushes somebody out, who comes out of this lineup? Right? Manel was picked up. He should get an opportunity, and Dahlstrom is here as well. So there's some good depth on the blue line, and I think Liljegren is, to me, the wild card, and whether or not Sandin gets the opportunity to be a top 4 defenseman. I can't say enough. I think Sandin's good. I hope he gets the opportunity to show that. Prospects, honestly, a lot of their prospects are already on the roster. Pavel Gogolev, he's getting some talk, of course, around him. And he may very well find himself in this somehow. That's why I didn't put Gogolev on this side, because, all right, so then who are you pushing out? There's other guys I didn't put up here. It was like, I could put them up, but I'm already into a second column of forwards. There's only so many forwards that can play. And then Rodion Amirov. And Amirov is going to push his way into a roster spot, I would think, next year. So Toronto, there's a lot of depth here. There are a lot of different options. In net, it's Mrazek, it's Campbell, it's a 1A, 1B situation as far as I'm concerned right now. I think that they'll play whatever goaltender's hot at that time. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mrazek goes plays Campbell. I like Mrazek. I think the loss of Anderson and picking up Mrazek, I think this could go either way. Anderson could rediscover his game in Carolina and be really, really good. Mrazek could carry over to Toronto what he started in Carolina, and he could be excellent. He also could suffer in Toronto, and we could see things fall apart. That's the beauty of before the season starts. We really don't know how this is all going to end. It's a lot of fun to watch. The other cup odds right now are 14-1. Those are good, but I want to point out Tampa Bay's a 7-1. Boston's a 12-1, and Florida is conservatively, and I think they're conservatively being rated at 20-1. So that's 4 teams in the same division that have relatively good odds at the Stanley Cup right now. Their last cup, 1967. It is what it is. They want to win another one. And there's enough talent here, I think, to make that work. I don't know if it's just maybe it's pressure that hurts Toronto. I don't know if it's too much expectation. People will point out, they'll say they pay too much money for their top 4 forwards. It makes it difficult to round out the rest of the roster. And yet I'm looking at this roster going, you could put together a pretty good bottom 6 with this 85,000 guys who are all down here. And you can put together a pretty good top 6. And Mrazek and Campbell are a capable goaltending duo. But in this division, they're likely in the first round going to play either Boston or Tampa. Although, I have them at 4th in the Atlantic, which could be, well, that'll probably put them against Tampa in the first round. But it will be interesting to see what happens. I honestly think the best thing for Toronto would be if Florida went on a run, Florida ends up against Toronto, and Toronto starts that series on the road. I think that might be the best thing. Toronto would be against a team that's gone longer without a victory in the first round than they have, and the pressure would not be on them on the road. It would still be on them at home, but that's one of those things that could help Toronto. I do have them 4th in the Atlantic. I have them behind Florida. I have them behind Tampa Bay, and I have them behind Boston. And while that may sound harsh, they were behind all 3 of those teams in the overall standings last season. And the Atlantic, while you've got Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo, who are all at various stages of a rebuild, the top is pretty stacked. This is a division that the top 4 teams are all pretty darn good. And I think Toronto, if they were in the West, would probably have a better chance. I think they would probably finish higher than 4th in the Central, definitely higher than 4th in the Pacific. But you deal the hand you're dealt, and that's what they have to do. Now the schedule's interesting too. They're at home against Montreal to open their season on the 13th. The next night they're in Ottawa, so there's a back-to-back right out of the gate. 16th they're at home against Ottawa, so they have the home and home against Ottawa. 18th they're at home against the Rangers. 22nd they're at home against San Jose, and then the next night, so there's the second back-to-back in October, they're in Pittsburgh. So while Ottawa, those are winnable games, Montreal, they should be motivated at home against Montreal to get their revenge, and the Rangers should be beneath them in the standings, same with San Jose. But that Pittsburgh game, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Then they're at Carolina on the 25th, at Chicago on the 27th. Anybody? And then, I'm not wearing my Matthews jersey, so the whole put in the hand of the year. But on the 30th, they're at home against Detroit. So it's a tough schedule in terms of the amount of games in 3 games and 4 nights kind of things that's going on. But their opponents aren't necessarily that scary, right? Overall, the month of October, it could go either way. And that's kind of how things work with Toronto. I do think that they're going to be competitive. I do still think they're a playoff team. I think the rumors of their demise are being overstated a little bit. They will always be the most beloved team in the NHL. They'll also probably be the most hated team in the NHL, which is how that works. But we'll see. We'll see how things work for the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. I wish them the best. And honestly, I really hope this is the year they finally win that first round. That whole storyline, I've talked about this for years now. Despite all this talk about, Shannon just hates Toronto. No, I would like to see them win around. I really would. So while, it was nice to see the underdog Montreal Canadiens do what they did, there's part of me that said, but of course it had to be the Leafs, didn't it? It wasn't the Jets. It wasn't Edmonton. It just had to be the Leafs. And so it leans into this idea that Montreal's really dangerous when they make the playoffs. All they got to do is get in there. And Toronto just can't get it done. So we'll see if that changes this year and whether or not next year I'm talking about, hey, they finally got to a conference final. Because I will say this, if they win round one, although if it's against Tampa, if they win round one, that's a pretty big win. But if they win round one and they lose round two, especially if it was against, say, like Boston, it's going to feel very familiar. It's going to feel like the team didn't take a step forward. That's why I say I think they have to make the conference final for it to be considered a success this year. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. And enjoy buying all these jerseys for all the guys that... There are a lot of forwards here. So, again, I think the Marlies are going to be pretty good. Because there's a lot of good talent here that they won't have enough room for on the Maple Leafs roster. Who makes it? Who doesn't? Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.